Hi everyone, welcome back to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions and professionals, how history intersects with education, culture, science, and the world around us. I'm Karen Yang, host of Historically Speaking. Today we have Katya Echazarreta. I'm so sorry, I'm trying
Perfect.
my best.
Perfect.
Thank you. And she is a Mexican American electrical engineer, science communicator, and citizen astronaut. She worked at NASA first as an intern and then as a test lead for the Europa Clipper Ground Support Equipment Group. And she's contributed to a total of 5 NASA missions. That's like 5 more than the average person, which is really, really cool. And also co-hosted Netflix YouTube series Netflix IRL. And she became the first Mexican-born woman in space as part of Space for Humanity's Citizen Astronaut Program, which launched June 4th, 2022. Thank you so much, Kat, for speaking with us today. We really, really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to add on to your bio or anything else like that?
Yeah, so since my flight, I've become very passionate about creating space-related opportunities in Latin America. So I've been working very hard in my home country of Mexico. We're pushing a constitutional reform right now, and basically what we want to do with this is open up the doors of Mexico to a upcoming space sector. I'll be creating my very own foundation to support space activities within Mexico. And then I have plans for creating a space development and research center within Mexico first, and then throughout Latin America. So that's currently what I've been up to.
Wow, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, like definitely creating those new opportunities will definitely inspire a lot of people to kind of follow in your footsteps with what you did just last year. That's really, really cool. Um, with that, I kind of have a question. I want to just like get started with that, I guess. Like going into space, like I feel like, I kind of just like glossed over that a bit, she's like, oh yeah, she like went to space, but it's like, oh, she went into space. I guess, what was your experience like aboard that flight or aboard that experience? And kind of like what are a few key takeaways, I guess, that you had from that experience?
Yeah, so personally, I've been training since 2019, and then I was selected in 2022. And so for me, I knew that this was always the dream, always the goal, and I wasn't really going to wait until an opportunity was given to me in order to start getting ready. I truly believe that if I was already ready by the time the opportunities arrived, then it was much more likely that they would be mine. And so
Mhm.
I think that I was very lucky. Lucky in a way is a funny word, right? Because it's like I'm lucky that I got this opportunity, but also I was ready for it,
Mhm.
which is extremely important. And so when this opportunity comes, I already have everything necessary, which is extremely important to the story because they had 1 month to select somebody. And
Oh
so they
wow.
couldn't just select somebody randomly. They needed to select somebody that already had the preparation necessary for a mission like this. So I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why I was selected and why this story went the way that it did.
Mhm.
But that also means that because I was prepared both physically and then mentally by them as well, that better experience. So now
Mhm.
imagine you're just a random person off the street and you're getting put into a rocket. Like that's not
Oh
going to
my
feel
God.
great.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I did have experience already with microgravity training, with high G-force training. And so that makes the experience better because it doesn't feel so heavy on your body and you are
Mhm.
able to enjoy it a little bit more. But
Mhm.
I will say, launch, which is usually what we think would be the worst part, is
Mhm.
not that bad.
Oh
The
wow.
worst part, for sure, is the return. That feels
Oh
rough.
wow. Oh my. Oh my gosh. Wow, like that's really like cool insight to know. I feel like, I don't have any plans to go into space, but I'll just be like, yeah, like launching is the easier part of that. Um, wow, it sounds like you had to undergo a lot of like physical, stress and physical kind of adapting to that physically and mentally, like you said. What do you feel like was a challenge or like a hurdle that you kind of didn't foresee or had the experience of kind of going through, and how'd you kind of get out of that, I feel like.
Yeah, so during the flight, I've always had a very weak stomach,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that I've been working on a lot because you're going to be going through a lot of different feelings and
Mm-hmm.
sensations, and some of them are not going to be very pleasant. And so for years before that, I'd already been working through that. I got myself an annual pass to Six Flags, to try to get over that,
Oh.
which is a hack. I talked to an astronaut and I said, "What do I do? How can I work on getting rid of it?" And he was like, "Roller coasters, go on as many as you can." Um, and so I knew that I was probably going to get a little bit nauseous, but it's a different kind of nauseous
Oh.
because you're not nauseous in the normal sense. You're nauseous because you feel everything in your stomach either weigh so much by the G forces,
Mm-hmm.
or it's quite literally floating inside of you,
Oh,
right? Because
wow.
when you're floating in microgravity, it's not just you physically on the outside that's floating, it's also everything you have inside. So your food, any of the liquids that you have on your insides, any of your blood, all of that stuff is floating too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's one of the hardest things for your own mind to understand because it's never felt that way before.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of try to do things and your mind is just completely confused.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the first things that you have to get over in those first few seconds of
Mm-hmm.
your body feeling very, very uncomfortable and not understanding why or what's going on.
Oh, wow. That's so crazy. And like I really like how you brought up, the Six Flags experience because yeah, like that just sounds like you need to definitely go on like King Ka a couple more
Yeah.
thousand times to kind of circulate that. Wow. Yeah, that's like a really crazy like physical challenge. I guess like because you kind of also mentioned that, you had to kind of get mentally prepared for that experience as well. What was going on, I guess, like mentally, or what was some mental lessons that you learned as a result of this experience?
I think one of the biggest things that you're going to have to go through is the fear factor.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be afraid. That is normal. It is a very normal part of the experience. I remember that for a few weeks before, you're starting to get closer, it just starts to get more and more overwhelming. And I got to the point where I couldn't even read anything online. I couldn't read any comments. I couldn't read any, and I'm pretty active on social media. It's really important for me to
Mm-hmm.
share this experience with as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But you're already feeling a little bit of that fear, and then you're also getting a lot of comments that maybe normally wouldn't affect you, but you're already sort of in a different state of mind, and so they're a little bit heavier on you.
Mm-hmm.
And as you start getting even closer and even closer and even closer, all of that just kind of starts to grow within you. And one of the most important things that I did through my mental preparation is practicing how you want to feel in that moment, because you're going to need to be in a good state of mind while you're sitting on top of that rocket. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want to have to deal with any anxiety, deal with any stress, to have a panic attack. You don't want to have to go through anything like that. You want to be able to enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
and take that fear and just put it on a shelf for a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. So we would practice how we want to feel during that moment. I would have to close my eyes and imagine the capsule that I was going to be in. I'm already sitting down. It's T minus, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes, and you're sitting there and you're just waiting, and there's nothing you can do anymore. You do not have your cell phone on you. It's you and your thoughts for
Mm-hmm.
those minutes as you prepare for this launch. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're supposed to just imagine it. In the moments when you feel calm and relaxed, if you have the time, then you close your eyes and you imagine it and you imagine it. And you do that as many times as you can leading up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so shocked about how well this worked, because when I was sitting in there, even though it was a different capsule than I had been training in my simulations, and it's a different one than the one I imagined in my mind.
Hmm.
It felt so familiar and it felt so comfortable. And I started thinking, how much better off would I have been if I had practiced feeling calm and relaxed for a final, right? Or for an interview. Like, this
Hmm.
is something that you can apply to so many different things, not just launching off into space.
Yeah, wow. I really like enjoy how you kind of made that connection between, like I was actually just thinking, I was like, maybe next time for like that physics test, I should like practice something like that,
Yeah.
even though it's I'm calculating something projecting instead of me projecting over. Yeah, wow, that's a really like cool and mindful tip, I think. Wow. Um, I wanted to kind of take a step back and kind of dive into, that like history aspect, even though you know, you have such like amazing like current day programs, which we also get to, of course. What was like, how did you first get your start in being interested in space, I guess, or being interested in NASA? Like, what's the origin story of your love for space before, you got to space?
Yeah, I've always been a very curious person, even in my youth. I didn't really fully understand. When you're little, you don't know that what you're doing is scientific thinking, but it, it really was. I would have questions and I would do experiments or tests and try to get to the bottom of it and try to understand. And so for me, science has always been a very big part of my life. It's always been
Mhm.
something that I just naturally gravitated towards. And not necessarily when you're little, that educational aspect, right? Not necessarily like I'm taking out books and reading textbooks about science. It's just
Yeah.
that thinking that you already have and the way of using the scientific method to go around day-to-day problems or day-to-day questions. And so for me, when I finally started learning it formally in school, it just felt very natural. It felt kind of like, oh, so sort of what I already do every day with all the
Yeah.
questions that I have.
Hmm.
And for me, I've always been very passionate about things that are very difficult to understand. If it's hard to understand, then I'm more interested in it
Hmm.
because it just like I want to understand, I don't like not understanding. And
Hmm.
so there are certain topics that I felt were so difficult and I just kept finding myself moving towards them because I would learn a little bit more, but then what I would learn would just confuse me further because now I just opened up the doors to this other side of it that it makes even less sense. And
Hmm.
those two things were electricity and outer space.
Oh, wow.
When you start thinking about just random things in your house, a light bulb, right? Say we
Hmm.
flip on a switch and the light turns on and it appears to turn on immediately. It's like, how is it doing that? How is it possible that it's turning on so quickly? Or when we look at our computers, when we look at our cameras, when we look at our cell phones, how
Hmm.
is it possible that somebody was able to do that? Right? Like it
Yeah.
is just so interesting for me to think about. And then on the other end of that, I had outer space.
Hmm.
And you know those videos that you would watch where it'll be like planet Earth and then they'll put next to planet Earth like Jupiter, and it's just so much bigger. And then the
Yeah.
planet gets little, and then
Yeah.
they'll put the sun, and then Jupiter now looks really tiny.
Hmm.
And then they show other stars that are so much more massive than our own sun, and it just starts putting the universe into perspective. I remember first watching those and just thinking, oh, we don't know anything. We There's just so much for us to learn and understand and know. And so I just kept finding myself going down that route. Like, what more can I learn? What more is there? What have we learned so far? What have they discovered in the past 5 years? What's still left to be discovered? I remember
Hmm.
I was in elementary school and they still hadn't confirmed whether Mars had ever had any water. And
Oh,
now
wow.
it's like, oh, yeah, of course it did, you know? But when I was in elementary school, that was still something they were looking for, that evidence.
Hmm.
And so seeing that happening in real time was so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think like something that you talked about with the idea of like Mars with water, like and only after we make that discovery or make that invention that we're like, oh, of course, like Oh, they should have thought of that, or, like, oh, this light bulbs, like, I'm sure it's not that hard to wire, but, obviously Thomas Edison was going through like thousands and thousands of test runs before he actually got there. Wow, like, I really enjoyed what you had to say about kind of getting your start in science there, because I think a lot of people, yeah, they think that, to show passion for something, I have to, read XYZ book, I have
Yeah, or be
to,
really good at it.
yeah. Yeah, or like, oh, be able to, do professor level research at like a super, super young age. But um, like you said, sometimes it's just sitting kind of with the fact that you don't really know much about something, but becoming really curious about it and doing anything you can to find the answer
Mhm.
to a lot of these really cool questions, for sure. Um, I guess like continuing on that idea of history, you definitely have made really, really cool history, being the first Mexican-born woman in space. Kind of like how have you considered that legacy, or how have you considered that impact, I guess, on, other Latina women around the globe, or just kind of, on society as a whole, I guess.
It's a really big responsibility. And I understood that from the beginning, but I don't think I fully grasped it at the beginning. It's
Hmm.
one thing to know and to feel, okay, this is probably going to be a big deal-ish, right? That's kind of the way that I looked at it. But when it happened, and for me to see the reaction of so many people, and to start seeing little girls dressing up as me, and to start seeing murals pop up all over the US and all over Mexico of me, that is just something that you truly never get prepared for.
Hmm.
And it still doesn't really feel real in a way. Kind of like it's happening to someone else and you're watching it happen, because making
Hmm.
that shift of me, that person that I live with every single day, me, um, they're looking up to me and what I've done and what I've accomplished.
Hmm.
And I have a responsibility now to make sure that it's not so hard for them to do what I've done.
Hmm. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, it's like you're definitely breaking a barrier and, kind of opening that, widening that barrier and kind of destroying it as a result for other people to kind of walk through it and continue, pursuing the next like future and pursuing, whatever can come next, for sure. I guess I wanted to wrap up with one more question. In the beginning, you mentioned all of this really, really great work, a space center, and a lot of research being done on your part as a result of your kind of foray into space. What kind of advice, or what kind of legacy, I guess, do you hope to continue passing on, or would you pass on to, girls looking up to you who want to, travel into space or something else like that?
I think the most important thing that I would want people to get out of my journey is how most of these things that I've done and most of these opportunities I've had, and then everything that I've done since then, has been created by me. It's
Mm,
never been something somebody just gave me and said, "Oh, look, I think you'd be really great at this. Go do it." And then I'm great at it, right? That doesn't happen.
mm-hmm,
It's you realizing you want something. So you start training before anyone even looks at you. You start preparing before anyone even tells you that something like this exists.
mm-hmm,
Or you're seeing a need and you want to be able to do something like that, but it doesn't
mm-hmm,
currently exist, and so
mm-hmm,
you decide, okay, then I'll do it. I'll
mm-hmm,
create those opportunities. I'll create these different programs. I'll create these new laws, because if it's not being done and it doesn't exist, and if I just step back and wait, then it's very likely not going to happen. So
mm-hmm.
that is the most important thing that I really want to share is if you want something, you're gonna have to do it yourself.
Yeah, yeah, this kind of reminds me of that callback you talked about of being like, it's like definitely like a duality of, you know, needing that luck to kind of, oh, maybe someone noticed this thing that you might have been perfect for, but so much of that, like 80-90% of that is your own work and your own
Right.
effort and your own like mindset into that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's really cool. I think those are the questions from me today. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything else you'd like to shout out or anything else like that?
I would just say that one of the most important things for me throughout this journey and this new journey that I'm on right now is always understanding what it is I want to do, what it is I want to create, because
Hmm.
especially for young people and especially for young women, we're constantly hearing from all over the place, whether it be from parents or from family members or friends or teachers or counselors, right? There's so many voices all the time about what they think would be good for us, what they think we should be doing. Like this is the safe way. You should want to do this. You should do this. You should do that. And so the most important thing here is always, what do you want? What is it
Hmm.
that you want? Because you're the one living this life and you're the one having to sit with yourself when nobody else is speaking. And you're the one that has to feel comfortable with what you're doing. So, what do you want?
Wow, that is so powerful. Oh my gosh. Now I'm like changing my brain chemistry. But oh my gosh. That's such an important question, and I feel like we had a really, really interesting conversation today, for sure. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. And to everyone watching at home, thank you so much as well, and I will see you next time.